All right, welcome in. We are going to dive right in today. It's something that I wasn't necessarily planning on talking about today, but have spent a lot of time thinking about and talking to other people about in the last week and a half, 2 weeks or so, and have talked about many times in the past. But um, we're going to dive in today to tracking progress, what progress ought to look like. What does it look like to track progress, and why is it important to track progress? And I think that's
Mhm.
going to be where we spend a little bit more of the time. Um, so Amy's with me today. Hi, Amy.
Hey y'all.
She's here. Um,
My little
sometimes,
niece, my,
go ahead.
my my sister moved to North Carolina, so my nieces are being raised Southern, which is its own can of worms there.
Mm-hmm.
But my little niece Olivia, who's 2.5, when I call her, she says, "Hey y'all." I'm like, oh,
It's
it's
really cute.
adorable, but also like a little too Southern for me.
You know, I was raised in the South, right?
I did not know you were raised in the South.
You didn't know that? I haven't told you that.
No.
I grew up in Atlanta.
Wow, that's
Ages 5 to 11, all of elementary school, my formative years
wow.
were so I said ain't and can't and y'all. I still have the y'all. You haven't heard me say y'all? I say it
I have,
fairly.
but like in the same way that I say y'all. It's more of
No,
a we
that's
adopt
that's
it.
still, yeah, that's kind of still that's still there. But y'all can't do that. That used to be me.
Yeah. That's how my mother
Now I
talks
throw wicked
sometimes.
around like it's no big
Ah,
deal.
because
But
you're a true New
well,
Englander.
because I lived in New England. I lived in Derry, New Hampshire, till I was 5. Then I moved to the South, and then we moved to Londonderry, which is the town next door. I've been
Mm-hmm.
up here since then. So like most of my life, I've been in New Hampshire, but
Mm-hmm. My mom is from Louisiana, so when you get her around her
that's deep
sisters,
south.
deep south, and Natchitoches, which if you look at the word, it does not look like it spells the word Natchitoches. It's like 700 letters long, and
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of C's and S's in the middle. But when she gets with her sisters, her accent comes out hardcore. So
I
we make
bet.
fun of her a lot because my dad's
I
from
bet.
Boston and my mom is from southern Louisiana.
Well, I've
The
told
two of
you
them
guys
together.
like I'll have moments where I'll and it's only been a couple times, but I've had people with accents come onto the podcast, and I can hold my own for a little bit, but
Mm-hmm.
at a certain point, I start to mirror the person,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll like slip into a little bit of it if I'm
Mm-hmm.
on the conversation with somebody with a British accent or an Australian accent for a little bit.
Yeah, that's where we're very big. I don't know if
Yeah.
you knew that. We're very big in, in England and Australia.
So naturally, I should go there. So I'm going to start here, and this is going to sound strange, but I wrote this in a post. So by the time this comes out, this post will already be live. But I wrote this in a post today because I heard this the other day, and it reminded me of this phrase. This is going to sound a little strange. You can't weigh a chicken with a ruler.
I mean, that's true. So yeah,
It's
I'm
the
with you.
wrong tool. It's the wrong tool. So this is I think what it comes down to when we talk about what does it look like to track progress.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And this is surrounding goals as well, right? So this depends on the goal, all of this, but the principles are going to hold true here kind of across the board.
Mm-hmm.
So I was having a conversation with a couple of people, right, who were having a hard time doing their progress photos, particularly at the beginning, but even subsequent ones. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about the idea of owning the starting point.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about that on here because we can't measure progress until we know where we've come from.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of like, I'm in New York, I'm on a trip and I'm in New York. You don't know where I came from, right? I could have been traveling from Connecticut or I could have been traveling from Tokyo, right? Until I know where I started from, I don't know how far I've come. So as
Mm-hmm.
much as it's hard and challenging, and it's one of the first things that people do when they start working with me is I'm like, hey, we got to take some starting photos and some starting measurements and all of these things. And I say to them before we do this, I'm like, this is going to probably suck a little bit.
Oh, it sucks. It sucks having done it. It's hard.
Because you're forced to confront the reality of where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of it, right? When we talked about point A and point B, when we did that episode, right, we have to own the starting point and why we can't stay there. So there's value in there, but it's also even more like the value of it is not to make you feel like crap so that you have to continue to do it, right? Mm-hmm. Like there's a way to, like, you could frame it in that way, like, I'm going to confirm for you that you need a coach because you're not happy with where you are right now. Like there's a way to frame it that way. There's very little long-term value in that.
Mm-hmm.
The long-term value is seeing how far you've come and giving a whole picture to it. So the idea being, we look at ourselves every single day in the mirror. We don't necessarily notice our hair grow.
Mm-hmm.
But then at some point we're like, okay, my hair's grown quite a bit. But it's usually when it passes some milestone. It like goes over it goes over my ears, right? Or
for John, it's when I say, you need a haircut.
You can
That's
have a haircut.
When he knows.
Or women, it's usually like, where does it fall? Like when it passes my shoulders, or when it goes to, the logo on my whatever, I mean, like, it's like, hey, my hair's long.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't necessarily notice it.
It's
day
so
to day.
Incremental, right?
Yes. And so we could look at ourselves in the mirror day to day and not feel like anything has changed with our hair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the same thing and because it's also like, if I was trying to grow my hair, right? I'm married, right? I understand. Like, women get into this thing, like, I'm going to grow my hair long, but then as soon as it gets long, they want to chop it all off.
Chop it off. Yeah, that's how we do.
Cycle that we live in. And I'm like,
yes,
you've been for a year trying to grow your hair out, and as soon as it gets there, you want to, like, I will never understand. I will never understand. I mean, I can try to understand, but I'll never truly understand it.
It just gets frustrating after a while. Like, you've grown it and it looks great for like half a second, or it looks really good when you come home from the salon, and then you can never achieve those same results.
Never do it again.
I just throw mine in a ponytail because I'm growing mine out right now.
Yeah.
And it's taking a very long time, and I'm getting a little annoyed. And I thought yesterday, I'm just going to chop it off again.
Chop it off again. Yeah, I'm just going to chop it all off.
Chop it all off. Start over.
And then again, it looks great when you come out of the salon, and then you're like, how did they make it look? Now it's just flat, and I have a nub. I can't even put it in a ponytail.
Damn it.
Yeah. No.
Yes, it's a roller coaster. Being a woman is a roller coaster.
It absolutely is. But the idea being, right, like, it would feel because you're like, I don't feel like my hair's growing, right? Like, I'm trying to grow it out. I'm trying to get it down to, whatever. I'm trying to get it down to middle of my chest or something like that. I'm trying to get it to a certain length, and it's taking forever. And the difference between, like, at the top of my shoulder and, the inch below my shoulder doesn't feel like much progress when you're trying to get it all the way down to the middle of your chest from, neckline. You're like, that's an inch is nothing to me in the scheme of things. And so you don't feel like, because you're not where you want to be yet. And so you wouldn't notice the progress that you've made unless you had an objective thing to compare it to, right? You'd be like, it hasn't moved at all. So this is an idea with a progress photo, right? I had somebody I was talking to I had a few people who I've been talking to recently who were having a hard time taking the progress pictures and looking at the progress pictures as they were going. Like, I know that I don't look where I don't like where I'm at, even though they're into the process. And I'm like, and even have gone so far, and this has been clients and a lot of people who've, like, I haven't made any progress. So, like, I'm not even, I don't even look at them. And I'm like, the problem with that logic is you don't know if you've made any progress unless you compare it to where you were.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a vacuum, you're going to look at that and say, it's not where I want to be, because you're doing a comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Comparison is the thief of joy. It's true, but it's not complete. Right? Comparison to something outside of yourself is a thief. Because I'm comparing me to where I want to be, and I'm just seeing the gap between where I am and where I want to be. And wherever I want to be might be in my head. It might be, I want to have Jessica Alba's body or Zac Efron's body or whatever, right? Like I want to like have, male and female, right? Whoever's listening here, but like I want to have this. I want to look a certain way. Like I have in my head the way that I would like to look, or I want to look the way that I looked 10 years ago, pre-kids, right? Or we've talked about like how ridiculous it is to compare yourself to like your high school body, right? Like, I want to look like I did in high school. And it's like you were a child in high school. Like you were a literal, you were a literal
burning
child.
8,000 calories just by existing.
Yeah,
because of the lifestyle. It is funny. We have a digital picture frame that brings up pictures of just over the past whatever we've uploaded to it. And I just remember looking at all these pictures of me and of John over the past, 10, 15 years. And I remember looking at one of them and remembering being in that moment when the photo was being taken and thinking I looked terrible because I was comparing myself to what I had looked like when I was in high school. And I'm looking at it now being like, my God, I looked great. I looked fantastic. Just totally different body from who I had been. But why on earth was I comparing myself to anything? Because I looked fantastic.
Yeah, 100%.
I compare my physical being now to that, and I'm like, I look very different. I'm no better, no worse. I look very different because I have different plans, different goals, different lifestyle these days.
Yeah, 100%. So we have, comparing ourselves to something that doesn't exist yet, right? That's where we feel the gap and we feel like a failure. So if I look in the mirror, and so this is where people are a little bit like, I think people miss the boat a little bit. We can all do it, but people who have been on a fitness journey and have struggled for a length of time, and we get into the mindset of like, okay, when I lose the weight, everything's going to be better, sort of thing, right? Like I'll feel better, I'll whatever, and like think that people who are or who have bodies that they maybe aspire to don't ever have those feelings. And yours is an example of that, right? Where you were in that place and you still felt that way. And I like, again, this is not meant to sound immodest, right? But I have what many people would consider a fit body. I am by no means a bodybuilder or an Instagram magazine cover worthy body. I don't desire to be, right? But I am fitter than the average bear, right? Like, I have visible abs in the right light, and you know what I mean, like that whole thing, right? Not shredded out of my mind, but whatever. Lean and feel good there. There are times where I walk by the mirror fairly regularly and I go, dang man, I don't know what happened there. Like that just doesn't feel great. And again, it's not I'm not beating myself up, but like the nature of our lives is we're gonna feel this way, and you would think that people who are in the best shape, quote unquote, the best shape, feel that the least. Bodybuilders, who are the people who literally do this as a profession, have the highest percentage of body dysmorphic disorder of any group of people.
Yes.
Right. They look in the mirror and they're like, you know what I mean? Like, and because they're picking themselves apart for what they think they ought to be and where they're not. And so the gap for them feels wider. So again, let me paint this a little bit of an interesting thing, right? The gap between financially in America, and I don't have the exact numbers here, but like the gap between the median household income, like the average American income, versus the 98th percentile income or net worth is closer than the 98th percent net worth and the richest person, right? Because the 98th percentile, you'd be in the 98th percentile with like, I don't know, 10 million, 100 million, even $100 million net worth, maybe something like that. But $100 million to friggin' Elon Musk at 200 billion,
right?
okay,
That's a much larger jump.
is a much bigger jump than the average American family with a net worth of 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so as we get closer to the top, we notice the differences, even though the differences become disproportionate, right? Like we get closer to, as we get closer to the target, we actually start to notice the ways that we fall short a little bit, and we become more particular with ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If I had 50 pounds to lose, I'm not picking apart where it's coming from or whatever. I'm just like, I would, if I looked at me at 50 pounds overweight to 20 pounds overweight, I'd be like, that's crushing it. Right.
I look amazing.
But the difference between I want to lose 5 pounds, you have to nitpick the little things. And so as we get closer, we start to become a little, and so there's where it starts to be like, is the last couple pounds worth it?
Right.
Here to tell you, it's probably not. Because it doesn't really change how you feel. That doesn't mean that you can't do it if you want to do it, whatever it means. But like, you probably haven't moved the needle a whole heck of a lot, but it's going to be hard to do it, and you're going to have to kind of pick yourself apart a little bit to get there. So that was a little bit of an aside from the original point, which is, let's say that I was in a place where I wanted to lose 30 pounds. And I've lost 10. But I'm not weighing myself, right? The only thing that I have to work with is my photos or how I look in the mirror, right? If I look at myself as 20 pounds overweight versus 30 pounds overweight, I'm probably going to look at myself in the mirror and still be like, yeah, I'm not quite, I wouldn't call myself lean or fit maybe yet, right? That would be maybe a little bit what's in your mind. And it might not feel like you've moved the needle at all. And you might take pictures of yourself down 10 pounds and be like, yeah, that's still not what I would like it to be. And you would be like, I don't feel like I've made any progress because I'm still not where I want to be. In a vacuum, those photos have no meaning whatsoever. Because they just tell you where you are. They don't tell you where you come from. You're in New York. You don't know where you come from. So you have to take those photos and compare them to the starting point or the previous photos. Not because so this is where we get into, and the same thing is true of all the different ways that you can track your progress, right? Measurements, how your clothes fit, all of these things. And we'll get into all of that and what you should do and that in a second. But the reason why we track progress, and I'm doing this through the context of weight loss, but you could do this through the context of strength training, right? You hit a personal record on the hip lift since our last podcast that we recorded, I think, where you hit 225. And I was looking back and I didn't have a video for the first time that you did it, but a year ago, you were hip thrusting 95 pounds or 115 pounds.
Yep.
But the leap, and we talked about this when you did it, the leap between the 205 and the 225 didn't feel as significant, right? As if you compared it to where you started, right? You're like, oh, that was a cool thing. But if you look at it compared to a year ago, you're like, holy crap, that's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like half a John
that you've increased.
and I've increased.
Yeah.
I can hip thrust
we're
my
gonna get
husband.
off
No.
the rails here.
No,
We're gonna
nope.
get. I saw where we were
No.
going.
I was like, no, that's the wrong pathway. It's a lot, and I'm proud.
Oh dear.
It
Oh,
was
dear.
fun to have him in the class that week, and I was like, "You want to try it?" He's like, "No," because that wasn't his goal. He wasn't there yet.
Yeah, which is great.
Mhm.
But again, if you compare it to the starting point, then it shows a little bit more of how far you've come.
Yeah.
As opposed to like just in a vacuum, right? If I were to like, if I posted that, like I posted it as like, hey, this is really, really cool, right? And and you got some love from people, you know what I mean? But like in a vacuum, especially in this is not meant to bring you down at all, right? By any stretch, but like on the internet, were I to just put up like, this is my client hip thrusting 225 pounds, there are other coaches or other influencers who are hip thrusting 600 pounds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like women doing this, and there's nothing that doesn't belittle what you did.
Not at all.
Or elevate what they did, right? Because that 600 pounds might not have been a personal record for them. The idea of like it's you against you is true, but like, what are we talking about? We have to compare to where you were to figure out how far we've come. But this is the most important part. So it's a celebration, yes, but the most important reason why we do this is for information, not determination. What do I mean by this?
Ooh, I like that.
Okay.
I like anything that rhymes, honestly.
Yes. Well, I came up with this phrase earlier today when I was writing the post, which is already going to be live now. But
all right, information, not determination. Explain,
information,
sir.
not determination. So if think about when I taught math as an example.
Yeah.
Or any subject, you're in school. You do a homework assignment and you get feedback on the homework assignment. I got 10 out of 10 correct. All right, that means I'm doing it right. So then when the test comes, I know that I'm doing it correct. Okay. I'm doing homework and I get 2 out of 10 correct. That is telling me that there is something not working with what I'm currently doing. I need to do something different before the test comes. If I keep doing what I'm doing, I'm going to fail. Information, not determination. If I get a 2 out of 10 and I take that as I don't get it, I fail, I might as well, give up, then I'm going to actually fail on the test that matters. But if I take it as this is showing me that I'm not doing it right, I have to change something. I need to go get extra help. I need to, whatever. On the lower stakes, right? That doesn't mean that the homework doesn't count. But like one homework assignment to your grade versus the final exam to your grade are very different weighted things. And so this is not, it's not punitive that you didn't get a 10 out of 10. That might have like a 10 out of 10 on a homework assignment in my class, how I graded stuff. If you got a 10 out of 10 on a homework assignment versus a 2 out of 10 on a homework assignment, that might affect your final grade for the class by like 0.1%. Okay, like this is not a big mover of the grade. However, if you got an A on a test versus an F on a test, that's going to move your final grade, depending on what test it is, a whole letter grade, a half a letter grade, right? Because we didn't have a ton of tests and they were weighted more. So taking the low stakes thing and that is telling you that you're not quite doing something right and burying your head in the sand is a recipe to stay stuck and fail on the bigger test. Where it counts.
The very best way to figure out if you are getting a 2 out of 10 is to bring that homework assignment to your teacher or to your coach so that they can look through it and be like, okay, here's what you're doing. Here's what you're doing. Here's what's going well. Here's where we need to focus. Because 100%. if we're just giving that assignment back to the student or to your client, being like, yep, that didn't work. good luck, without
Mhm.
helping them through it, or without, as the client, taking on the responsibility of getting help through it. And
Mhm.
you're gonna keep digging yourself into the same hole, very likely, because you don't know how you got there in the first place. I mean, you might have an inkling, but you don't know how to get yourself out of it.
Well, this is the argument for the coach, the Sherpa, right, that we've talked about on the podcast before. The idea of like, if I get a 2 out of 10 and I'm just staring at the paper, like I didn't get anything right,
Yeah.
but I don't know what I did wrong, right? That's a problem. So we need somebody to come in and be able to point out like that's what was going wrong, right? And sometimes it might be obvious. You're like, okay, I just added every time I was supposed to subtract or something like that. But like most of the time, if you're getting 2 out of 10, something's not working.
Right.
And so the same thing holds true when we take any sort of measurement, tracking, whatever. It's not a determination in that this is a line in the sand, you are this. The important piece of this is that this is information about what we've been doing to this point. Is what we're doing working? If it is, let's keep doing it. If it's not working, then we need to change something. But we don't know if it's working or not unless we do it and face the reality of it, right? Like if I look at the homework assignment, and this is what was infuriating to me as a teacher, right? Kids would come in and I'd be like, "Hey, turn in your homework." They're like, "I didn't do it." And I'm like, "Well, why didn't, what was going on?" I was like, "Did you, parent, whatever, what happened?" And they're like, "I didn't know how to do it." I'm like, if you had tried anything and turned it in with your name on it, that would have been more useful to you than just not doing it because you were convinced that you weren't going to be able to do it, or like that you didn't have it, that you hadn't made any progress. The idea of like, I'm going to skip my progress photos because I don't think I've made any progress, right? You're ignoring the problem. And until we face the problem, we can't change. And so we're destined to stay stuck. So you got to turn it in. You got to face the reality of where you are, good, bad, or anywhere in between. Not because it determines, like, if you haven't made any progress, that doesn't mean that you failed. It means that you haven't found the right path yet. Hear what I just said. It doesn't mean that you failed. It means you haven't found the right path. What's the key word?
Yet.
You are not destined to stay stuck. The only way you're destined to stay stuck is if you bury your head in the sand and you don't face the reality. Because you're just going to keep doing what you've been doing, and you're going to get what you always got. If you want something you never had, you have to do something you've never done. So we have to face the reality of where we are and let that inform where we go from here. So let's take this as a for instance. One, you might be pleasantly surprised. This has happened with many of my clients. One of them is Joe. I'll call him out because he's shared this, and I've shared his story before on my thing. He took progress photos, and he texted me this. He's like, "I was not looking forward to taking progress photos because I don't like it. Hasn't really been going. I haven't felt like it's been going great. Haven't been nailing it." Right. Like, and this is what happens in our head. Like we haven't been 100%. So we feel like we've been failing. Right.
Yeah.
And I took the photos and I didn't feel like 100% about them. But then I looked at them compared to where they were. It was like 6 weeks before, 8 weeks before. And he said, and I'm going to curse. I'm going to do it. But I'm quoting him. I'm quoting Joe.
Can I record you?
Okay. When we're recording right now. He's like, holy shit, look at my back. Like, look at how different it looks.
Yeah.
I was blown away by this because I didn't think that I had been making progress. That's where facts don't care about your feelings. Okay. And you might feel like you're not making progress when in reality you are. And this is what probably happens with most of my clients, is because a lot of people think that we have to be perfect in order to make progress. And then they see that they've made progress while not being perfect. And they're like, oh, this is pretty freeing. I can do this because I've left a lot of meat on the bone with some low-hanging fruit and some things that I probably could have done. And it's motivation to keep going and just double down on the things that you're already doing, but even do them more, because you're like, well, crap, I made progress with kind of being only sort of okay. If I just move that to actually okay, I'm going to see even more progress. And if I move it past okay to like I make one more conscious decision and not just no conscious decisions, I'm going to be flying. It's a freeing thing.
It really is.
Flip it on its head. I'm doing something and I feel like I'm crushing it, right? Tracking everything, doing all my workouts, doing all my steps, hitting this number, calorie number, protein number, sleeping, steps, the whole thing, just nailing it. Measurements don't go down. The question then is not, or the response, the natural response is, what the heck? Why am I the only one that this doesn't work for? That's a natural response. I get it. Okay. But where we have to go is, why? Why aren't the measurements going down? Because they don't lie. It's clearly not working. What it is that we're doing is clearly not working. So there's one of a couple things happening. If you were, let's just for ease of, let's just use numbers for ease of reality here. Let's just say that your calorie targets was 1,800 calories and your protein target was 110 and you were getting 10,000 steps a day. All right. So you're like, okay, I'm getting 10,000 steps a day. I averaged 1,800 calories and I averaged 110. I'm tracking it, doing the whole thing, weighing everything, doing all this stuff. And it didn't move. One of two things happened. Either you didn't track appropriately, or it's possible that that number is too high. I don't know what just happened. I just got balloons. That was one of the... If you're just listening, you're not going to understand. And I don't even know if this shows up on the... But I don't know if this is like... This is Riverside that we record. It's not even Zoom, but I've seen this happen on Zoom recently where I'll count and I'll count like this and it'll like do the thumbs up or something like that. But I just held up the number 2. I wonder if it would do it again. Yeah, it does. Balloons just come up like, why is the peace sign like balloons? I don't understand. This is so trippy. I'm sorry. That was wild. I don't know what just happened.
Is it only you? I think it's only you. It's only you.
Something special about maybe there's a setting on my computer or something.
Does it think it's your birthday?
It's not my birthday.
I know.
In case
you would have gotten a cake.
I've never gotten a cake from you on my birthday. How is that possible?
Because I think you're a little too healthy for what I bake. It's a lot of butter. So much butter.
Listen. On my birthday, calories don't count.
Oh, you should see the cake that's being picked up right now. It's chocolate cake with peanut butter frosting.
I mean, that feels a little heavy. Like, I don't know if it, like, from a taste perspective,
No, it's not.
No, well,
my peanut butter frosting is very light.
Oh,
delicious.
You're unique.
Okay, back on track.
I don't remember what we were talking about.
I don't even know. Balloons. Your number.
Oh. Okay, so your number might be too high.
Okay.
All right.
Which number are you talking about? Are you talking about
the calorie number would be too. Okay. Might be too high.
Okay.
Now that's not super likely, right? Particularly like if you've been like, oh, I've been doing 12 times my goal body weight, you know what I mean, and I'm not seeing any progress. What's likely happening is that you're not maybe tracking appropriately, and it's not. This isn't an indictment of you, right? But it's a reality that we need to face. Like, why might my like if my calories are this, why am I not seeing this? It might be like, okay, am I not weighing the oil that I cook the
Yeah.
thing with or drizzle on it, or am I eyeballing certain things, or you know what I
That's
mean?
the
Like,
yeah.
yeah.
I think
And
that's where a lot of us fall guilty is like
yeah.
we'll measure it for a little while and then we're
Mm,
like, I know what it looks like. And
yeah.
then we'll just start eyeballing it. And then a half a cup turns into 3/4 of a cup. And then in a
Mm-hmm.
month it's a full cup of whatever is the thing you're supposed to try to be keeping low.
Yeah. And again, there's nothing wrong, like, not saying you ever have to weigh anything or measure everything, right? But that could be what it, like, if you were tracking, that could be what is the issue. I had a situation with a client where they were like, I feel like I need to move my calorie goal down because I think that this calorie goal is too high. And then we looked, and their average, and this has happened multiple times, and again, I don't track with all my clients, but some people like it, and it's a useful tool for a period of time. But we looked at like their target was, I think, 1,800 again, and their average for the last 4 weeks was like 2,000. And I'm like, moving the target isn't the issue; it's hitting the one that we are trying to hit. Is what we're trying to do. So like, it's not that I'm gonna come to you with like, all right, I'm gonna try to make you feel bad about why this is. I'm gonna try to figure out where is, just like I did as a teacher. The idea is to figure out where is the missing link here, like Detective Jeff. Like, where, like, if you show your work on a math problem, I can go through and I can be like, this is the step where it all went to crap. And I can see what you did, and we can kind of reverse engineer the logic for what you ought to do in that scenario. So the same thing is true with this. If we think that we ought to be losing fat, measurements should be moving, progress photos should be doing, and they're not. And this is going back to the process versus the outcome side of things, right? It's informing us about the process. So this tells us if the photos, the measurements, the whatever have not moved, then that tells us that either the process wasn't sufficient or we weren't adhering to the process. It's one of two things. Or it could be a combination of the two. But first thing we got to do is make sure that we're adhering to the process that we set up. Whatever it is, we're hitting the benchmarks that we said that we were. Because people will get frustrated, I think, oftentimes, and this is not an indictment on any clients, it's a natural thing, okay? But where people, and I've done this enough to know when people get frustrated in the process, and it's when they feel like they're doing everything right, but they also feel like they're not seeing the needle move. And notice what I said twice right there.
Feel like.
I feel like this. I get feelings are real. Feelings are important. I'm not going to deny your feelings, okay? But we have to face the realities of what's happening in order to determine where do we go from here. I have to not feel like I'm making progress or not making progress. I have to know whether I'm making progress or not making progress. I can't feel like I'm doing everything right. I have to know whether I'm doing everything right or not. And if I know those things, then I can get to the bottom of why it's not working. So I'll give an example for my business because I do this a lot.
Yeah, that's helpful.
So I talked about last year my business doubled in revenue. And this is not, again, we talked about it, I think, on the most recent one. Like, this is not a grandiose number, okay? There are people who make what I made last year in a month, in a day, even in this business. But I was proud of it. So this is, again, comparison to yourself versus other people, right? If I compare what I did last year or what I'm doing to other people, I'm going to feel like I didn't do enough. But when I compare it to where I started and where I was previously, I can be like, oh, that's pretty impressive. Like, go me, go team. Hooray. In the moment, throughout the year, if you were to ask me, how is this year going? There were a lot of times where I would have been like, this has not been a great year for the business. And I could point to a lot of things that I did not do well last year. A lot of opportunities I left on the table, a lot of mistakes that I made, a lot of windows where I had imposter syndrome or I just shut down, I didn't do anything, felt like a failure. Mm-hmm. So this is not going to constantly, but then I look at the end and I can look at a couple of things. One, I can look at what is the outcome, right? I can look at that and I can say, okay, the revenue was double. So now I can ask, what went differently? Mm-hmm. What did I do that was different to generate that? Because I want to double down on that. I want to do more of that. And so I've been tracking certain things that I know are needle movers in my business. And those numbers were all up from the previous year. Pieces of content that I post. There's the thumbs up. That's wild. You see it? Bam. There it is. Wild. Bubbles of thumbs up. I don't know. It's
only fancy. On your side.
I think it might be the fancy computer. Maybe that's it. I don't know. If
that's the change since last time.
I got a new computer, so maybe that's it.
Yeah.
But, and this isn't even real, like I got like an open box like 2 generations ago. It's just new to me, basically. But I needed one that was not going to malfunction on me. But
helpful
pieces of content, conversations that I had, number of people I said, hey, like, I'm happy to have have a chat with you if you're interested in it. Number of emails I sent, podcasts I recorded, you know what I mean? Things that I can like unequivocally say, this is what I did. Right? So this is the idea of tracking things that you've done. Right? That's the process piece of it. I did this as a process, and that led to this as an outcome. If this outcome was not what I wanted it to be, then I would have to look at the process. Right? But because I saw that moved the needle, then I just got to do more of what I've already done. I just got to keep doing what I've already done and do it better, more consistently, more efficiently. And with enough time, with a long enough time horizon, I'll get there. But I have to have that. I wouldn't feel in a vacuum if I told you what I made last year, or even in the context of the other coaches, it wouldn't feel like I did a ton. Because I'm not where I want to be. I'll own that, right? Like in terms of what I've said is like my target for what I would like the business to generate. Mm-hmm. Not that I'm going to feel like a failure if I don't hit that, but like what I've said is like, hey, this would be what would allow us as a family to do XYZ. I'm not there yet. So I would just look at where I was last year and be like, oh, I'm not where I want to be. And I wouldn't have seen where I'd come from. So here are the things that we want to be doing. So super practical here as we kind of finish up. So that's conceptual, right? Why you have to be tracking your progress and you have to own it, even though it's hard. Right.
I think one of the hardest things about it, and this might be just me, but those pictures exist in my phone and there's nowhere that I can put them where they are hidden from me. Mm-hmm. So like when I'm scrolling through looking at pictures next to friends or with my kid, I'm like, oh, there's a picture of me in essentially a bikini, which I'm like, this is not something that I want the average bear to see. So I need to figure out a workaround around that. Like print them out or email them to myself and then delete them. Phone.
Have your husband take them.
Because he would love pictures.
He would love to have those photos on his phone. He would. I have all of Megan's photos on my phone. Megan cannot see them.
That actually might not be a bad just way to move forward for both John and I. Because if he sees his photos, he'll almost be more discouraged because he'll still think that's where he is.
That's the natural response. It is. And I'm not dismissing that.
No,
but this is where we have to go into it with the mindset of this is information. Mm-hmm. it has no bearing on you as a person. It doesn't even determine what if you failed or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's about going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Where do I go from here?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So again, road trip. I'm in New York. I'm coming from Connecticut. The goal is LA. Right? If I don't know those three things, I don't know where to go next.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your one data point cannot exist in the vacuum.
In the vacuum. If you just tell me I'm in New York, where do I go? I'm like, where are you coming from? Where do you want to go? I don't understand. Like, which way are you facing? Like, I could just be like, all right, keep going straight, and you're facing east, and you're trying to go west. Mm-hmm. I gotta know what you've been doing, and you're like, hey, I want to get to LA in the next 48 hours. Do you think I can do it? I'm like, what's your pace been? And you're like, well, I have a newborn in the car, and I've been stopping every 45 minutes because they got to get, whatever. You're not making it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just you and one other person and you guys can just drive straight through and pee in empty water bottles, yeah, you're going to be fine. Right? I got to know what you're doing in order to know where to go.
Mm-hmm.
I took that analogy to its furthest extreme.
Yeah. Anytime that we bring peeing into water bottles into a conversation, we may have tipped over the edge.
I think it held up.
Yeah.
So this is the I'm not going to pretend that it doesn't. There aren't emotions that are involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but if we let how we feel determine what we do, we've lost. We have to feel our feelings.
Yeah.
Okay. But I'm not going to do it because this is where we really get into trouble. I'm not going to do it because I'm afraid of how I'm going to feel.
Mm-hmm.
We're not even afraid of the reality. We're afraid of how we're going to feel about the reality. We're afraid of the symptom, not the problem. Right. This is where we start to get anxious about anxiety, right? Like I'm worried about, you know what I mean? And now this has really gotten a hold on us. Like we're putting too much stakes on it.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to remove our value from the photos or the numbers or whatever. We have to, because we're more than that.
So when it comes to doing physical measurements, like using
tape measuring
things, do you think that that's as important? Slightly below photos, or
I would do it above photos
in conjunction? Okay,
I would do it if you only did one thing, I would do your measurements. Mm-hmm. Because I get that sometimes photos are hard for people. Yeah. I think that you can see things in photos that, because again, it's a very real thing, right? Like to see a photo, numbers are hard to quantify, right? Like if I said I lost 3 inches off my waist, you'd be like, oh, that seems like a lot. Mm-hmm. But that's still a little nebulous. Like I've lost 5 pounds. Good for you. Not sure what that means. It doesn't have the same. Now, in terms of frequency, so we'll get super specific here in terms of practical things that you can do to measure your progress. All right. In order of, I would say, importance, which is maybe so measurements would be number 1, and frequency, I would do them every 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. Not much sooner than that. It's a little too short to see progress. And then longer than that, again, you're not getting the feedback as frequently as you might need in order to pivot, right? You could go a month and not have done and not be making progress and not know that you're not making progress. And so then you're going to get to the end of the month and you're going to be like, my measurements didn't move and I just spent a whole month and I didn't move. That would be a frustrating thing. Mm-hmm. So that's an appropriate amount of time. It's not too close because you're not, so where do we take measurements? Chest, waist, which would be the kind of the smallest part of your abdomen. Umbilicus, which is like right below your belly button. Hips, right, the fattest part of your bum. And if you want to throw arms and legs in there, right, you do arms at the peak of your bicep. You do your legs like 6 inches above your knee, kind of thing. And if you're going down in your total measurements, so this is what I do, right? Do your measurements, and then look at, how I literally do this is you have a spreadsheet, or I'll do it, with my clients, they'll log it. But if I do this for me, I just put it in a spreadsheet and I just enter them in, and then I just do this minus this, right? And then what's my total plus minus? And if my total plus minus is like I lost an inch total, then keep on keeping on. If I lost a half an inch, that's probably okay, but maybe I moved the needle a little bit, depending on the pacing. But if you lost an inch, keep on keeping on. If you didn't lose anything, then you probably need to change something that you're doing.
Yep.
And if you're curious as to what you should change, go back and listen to the the Building Blocks of Fat Loss series. Because and Dan Rosenthal, who was on like the third episode of this podcast, is the first person I heard this phrase from. But inch loss is fat loss. Okay, if we're losing inches, you're losing fat. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Because most people, when they talk about losing weight, they actually want to lose fat, right? It's not necessarily like we want to lose weight, you know what I mean? But like want to change how our body looks. So inch loss is fat loss. If I'm trying to gain muscle, this is the same thing is true, right? I could, hey, did my arms grow, right? Did these measurements go in the other direction?
Yes.
Right? Like if I'm trying to grow my glutes, did my butt get bigger? Right? If it didn't, then I need to eat more food, right? Like this could be the same thing. I could track my weights, in the gym. Like, hey, did in a month's progress, did I go up in weight in any of my lifts? If I didn't, then I need to look at what I'm doing. Have I hit a plateau, so to speak? If I'm trying to get stronger, I could measure my heart rate, right? My blood pressure. All of these other things are good measurements. But I'm talking a little bit about fat loss here because that's just generally what we talk about on the podcast. But heart rate, blood pressure, all of these are good. Resting heart rate, good other measurements as well. Talking about fat loss again, coming back to it. The next thing would probably be progress photos, and I would do those about every 4 weeks.
Okay.
2 weeks is usually not enough time to see a ton of progress. You could do them every 2 weeks, but like, again, that's a little tough, right? We usually need about 4, 6, 8 weeks to start to see some movement in the photos. So like if you just started, I wouldn't take a photo again for at least 4 weeks. You might not see a ton of movement in the photo for 8 weeks or longer.
And I think what's hard that we'd had to do for progress photos is, I don't know about anyone else out there, but whenever I'm taking a photo of myself without a shirt to cover my area that I'm not super happy with, I suck in as far as I can.
Yeah.
Because even if this is just a photo for me, I still want to appear smaller.
So
in these progress photos, you can't.
Yeah.
Right?
No. So the way to do progress photos is this. One, this is coming back to like you have to face the reality. Okay. So don't put lipstick on a pig. That's a messy metaphor with what we're talking about here. But the idea is like, don't try to pretty it up.
Right. Don't sugarcoat it. It is what it is.
It is what it is. Because if you try to make it look better than it is, then you're not getting the appropriate information. You're just not. And so you're going to pretend that it's a certain way, and then you're going to think, oh, I've made progress, and you're not going to change anything when you didn't make progress. This is about information. It's not a determination. Okay? Especially if you're like, these aren't for anybody else. These are to tell me what to do next. That's the point, right? I'm taking the measurements to tell me what to do next. That's why I take the measurements. If I don't do anything with these, there is no point in taking them. If I don't do anything with these, there is no point in taking them. They have to be that. So the way that I do it though, because we do want to see this, right? Like we want to have this. So the way that I do photos is you're gonna have a few poses, right? You're gonna do from the front, from the side, from the back, okay? And you're gonna do relaxed, not necessarily just good posture, right? Is what I say. It's just like, hey, I'm gonna stand up tall, okay? Like you're a 4-year-old getting measured, right? I'm gonna stand up tall, right?
Had to get that extra half inch.
Get that extra half an inch. Stand up tall, but you're not flexing anything. You're relaxed, right? Front, side, back. And then you're going to do flexed, okay? So from the front and the back, you're going to do the double bicep pose, 2 up by your side. And then from the side, you're going to kind of flex down at your side here. Or you can do arms out in front of you and flex that way so you make like I don't know, like half a T or something like that. I don't know what,
Upside down L.
Upside down L. There we go. Okay. If you're curious, people ask me this is a super tactical thing, but just so you're curious, how to do this if you're by yourself.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody to do it. Prop your phone up against something, hit record, step back, go to each of the poses and hold it for 2 seconds. Just rotate around and then take screenshots of each of the poses.
Why didn't I think of that? I'm like running to set a timer between every shot.
This is my brilliance.
Annoying.
No, that's just a pro tip.
That was wow. That was good.
Little nugget in there for you. Super practical. 56 minutes in.
Let's hope they got this far.
And then the next thing so that's your measurement. All right, there's your photos. Okay, and then you can put them side by side. Okay. Compare apples to apples. Next thing would be how your clothes fit. And honestly, I think you could, if you didn't want to track anything, you could, this is one that you're going to observe anyway, right? And it's also the one that usually feels the best, right?
And it's the one you're going to feel first.
You're going to notice.
You're going to notice it right away when you're whichever goal you have. You're going to notice if your pants get looser, if you're trying to lose, or if your pants get tighter, if you're working on gains.
Yeah. Well, I remember the day you came in and you were like, I tried on a pair of pants and they didn't
buy
fit
new pants
because my glutes were too big. And I was like, what a win.
What? I know. It's so bizarre. It still shocks me. But
yeah. And so I have pants that are like my barometer, right? So
we all have those.
Yeah. And so I wear sweatpants almost every day or jeans, which have a little bit of give to them. And so I can wear those within 15 pounds of each other, basically. Like they're fine across the board. But when I was in around this time last year, before I did my 12-week, 14-week cut or something like that I did, I have 3 or 4 pairs of chinos, kind of khaki type pants in different colors that I wear once every 2 weeks when Megan and I go out to eat, basically. And I used to wear them every day when I taught, but now I wear them once every 2 weeks. And I was like, these are getting a little tight, right? And those for me was like, okay, that's not necessarily this is a bad thing, but that's an indicator that, hey, the waist is going in the other direction. And I knew when I had kind of reached a point of okay, the thing is moving when these are comfortable. These have a little bit of room in them because they are not as stretchy. They are a little bit more firm in the sand. And so it's okay, these are the thing. And my favorite phrase around this is the scale lies, pants don't lie. Pants don't lie, and so you start wearing clothes and you're like, holy cow, these used to be tight on me. So and I'll celebrate my wife here because I love doing that. And so she pulled, she had her clothes, so listen, my wife had 3 kids in 18 months. She was pregnant for it was July of 2019 that she was pregnant. We had the twins in November of 2021. So it was 2.25 years where basically she was pregnant immediately postpartum with Levi or pregnant again, and so it's been quite a bit of time since she's felt at home in her body. And so she kind of packed away some of the clothes that were her pre-pregnancy clothes. Okay. Not just like, hey, I'm not going to wear these for a little bit, so let me just get them out of my closet while I have these other clothes that I'm working toward. And she pulled out those crates, a couple weekends ago, and she's been wearing some of the clothes from pre-pregnancy recently.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, holy cow, like that's wild. And
she looks amazing.
I'm so proud of her.
Mm-hmm.
And again, she would look at it and be like, man, like, I don't know, like if she just looked at a photo of herself, which she did, right? So like this happened. We took progress photos for her a couple weeks ago, and she looked at them and she's like, yeah, man, I don't know about that. And then I showed her what 6 months ago where she was at, and she's like, oh wow, like that's a significant difference. And I was like, so and even though she's known, like the number on the scale has gone down and her measurements have gone down, right? Seeing the visual picture, but even more so, like putting on the pants was the best win, right? Because she like, dang man, I haven't worn these pants in 4 years, almost 5 years. Haven't been able to wear these pants, and to put them on is like, that feels real good. That feels real good. So your clothes start fitting better, or the way that you want, however that is, right? Like for me, when I'm like around this time of the year, I kind of want to like, listen, I want to fill out my shirts a little bit more. I'm wearing like longer sleeves, and I'm like, man, like I don't really want to have a lot of room in the sleeves of this sweater right now. I want to look like I'm in a scuba suit, right? I want to look like I'm the Rock. Like this thing is painted on me because my muscles are so big they can't be contained by this shirt, right?
I would get you a black turtleneck sweater and a gold chain.
No, not that kind. Not that photo of the Rock. Like the more modern photos of the Rock, right, where he goes in places and he's just like. Just wearing stuff that you're like, are you CGI'd? Like, what is going on?
Is that body paint?
Are you like just sewn into that? What is happening?
Are you CGI? That was good.
So
I like that. I like that.
That's where like a scuba suit. Like I want, like I want to be like, that dude is busting out of that shirt, man. But it looks loose, right? It doesn't look like I bought a size too small. It's like, oh, that shirt like kind of fits him, but he's just so muscular that he like is blowing up. This is the little bit of the gym bro in me that it has to kind of die in the current state of life that I'm living, where I'm like, listen, the gains are not a coming right now. Like we're just keeping what we got. That's the goal. But there is that, right? Like there are days where I put on a shirt and I'm like, all right. Look at that. Like I'm feeling pretty good here. Right. And there's something way more satisfying than like, oh, my biceps are half an inch bigger than they were. Like that doesn't move the needle for me, because it's oftentimes what it is that we want is like, I just want to wear the clothes that I want to wear without thinking about it. Right. That's the thing that I hear from almost everybody is like, I just want to walk into the closet, pull anything down and put it on and know it's going to fit. And it's going to fit the way that I want it to fit.
That's the dream.
That's the dream. Like, I don't care what the number says, right? Because, again, I'll say this. Your favorite influencer, celebrity, whoever, who is, like, in the phenomenal shape, and you're like, oh, I wish... They probably weigh more than you think that they do. They probably weigh more than you think that they do. Because muscle is heavy. Like people are blown away sometimes. And again, this is not like, but people are a little surprised when, if they saw me without a shirt on sort of thing, and I'm 5'10", and I tell them I'm like 180 pounds. And they're like, I would think that you're like 165, right? Because I'm 165. You know what I mean? Or like as a dude or whatever it is. And they're like, you're 180 pounds? Like, I'm technically obese by BMI standards. But again, it's just like we just don't have a reference frame for what that number is. And so the number is fun, is so this is the last thing I'll get to, and then we'll kind of wrap the thing up here.
Okay.
The last thing is the scale. And there's nothing wrong with the scale. There's also nothing right with the scale. Okay. There's nothing inherently valuable about the scale. This is where I come back to what I said at the very beginning, right? You can't weigh a chicken with a ruler because it's the wrong tool. It's difficult to measure fat loss on the scale because the scale is not a measure of fat loss. The other three things that I said are a better measure of fat loss. Measurements are a measure of fat loss, unequivocally. Measurements are a measure of fat loss. Photos, you will notice fat loss. Pants, you will notice fat loss. The scale, you could have the scale go down and not really have lost a lot of fat. You could have the scale go up and have lost fat. You could have the scale stay the same and lose fat. The scale can do whatever the heck it wants to do. Right? The scale is going to fluctuate in particular day to day. Right? And I don't think we've done a whole episode on all the reasons the scale goes up or down.
I think we've talked about it a little bit, but I know you've done a lot of posts on Instagram.
I've done a lot of things on it, and there's reasons of it. I was on another person's podcast, and we talked about it as well. So I'm not going to necessarily dig into it here. But it's either your food or water weight is what really determines what the scale does. Now, over time, you can see a trend if you're losing fat. Over time, you will. But this is 4 weeks. Minimum. If you're going to weigh yourself, you have to weigh yourself every single day, and then you have to forget about the number. You have to get it, you got to write it down, and you got to forget about the number. Like, it has to have no bearing whatsoever on how you feel that day, right? If it does, don't weigh yourself. Like, if it's going to determine what you do that day, right, that's the information piece. That's too much information to determine what you do that day. The scale went up, therefore I have to do something different. That's too much information. You're changing things too often, right? The scale, we have to look at averages, right? What was my average weight this week compared to 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, 4 weeks later? Okay. Look at the overall trend. Am I trending down? If you're trending down, then it's working. Okay. But it is not the best tool. It is in fourth place for a reason. But this is what I'm saying. Hear what I'm saying here. The reason why the scale is not a good tool is because of what we've said this whole podcast. What is the purpose of measuring progress? To inform what you do next. The scale does not allow you or does not inform you appropriately of what to do next. It informs you too rapidly, and it can give you false information. And so you would think that you are not losing fat, and so you would do something differently. Right? That's where the problem lies. If we're using this feedback as information, where do I go next? That's the point of it. Then the scale is not a good metric for that. You can use it. That's fine. Okay? But we oftentimes put too much stakes on it as well.
Yes.
Because the scale lies. Pants don't lie. Measurements don't lie. Photos don't lie. They don't. So, take the picture. Own the starting point. Own where you are. Know that it doesn't determine where you are, and because that's going to tell you where to go next. So you don't stay stuck. But don't bury your head in the sand. You got to confront the reality. Because otherwise you're just going to stay where you are. All right? Did I miss anything? That good?
I don't think so. That was pretty good.
I feel pretty good about it.
I liked it.
I liked where we ended up. I'm excited where we're going to go next. I'm not going to say anything. But because I'm not 100% positive it'll be the next episode, but I'm going to be doing a lot of I would like it to be the next episode, but I want to make sure that I'm doing the next thing very well. So there's going to be a lot of preparation going into this next kind of segment series that we're going to be doing. My hope is to have it for the next time we record, but 3 kids might not happen.
Life.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. Rate, review, comment, send us a message, whatever you need to do. But appreciate you being here. We'll talk to you soon.